Hey there, it's David Roberts, senior staff writer at grist.org. I was getting ready to write a long, wonky post about this, but I figured nobody would read it, so maybe I should just talk it out for a few minutes instead. I wanted to make a point about costs. It's a familiar point by now for climate hawks and others and for environmental economists, that certain activities impose costs that are external to the price of that activity. So for instance, coal electricity. The cost of coal electricity does not reflect the costs it imposes on health in terms of asthma or other respiratory diseases, or mercury pollution in the water and birth defects that causes, or on and on down the line. So coal has these externalities. And like I said, by now this is I think a fairly familiar point, but I still don't feel like externalities are taken seriously, either in wonk circles really, or definitely not in the public, because very frequently when we talk about imposing some sort of price or price penalty on coal, either through a carbon tax or a cap and trade or some regulation or what have you, inevitably we end up talking about, well, this is going to raise the price of electricity. And that's true insofar as it goes, but it also is only half the story, because you haven't created new costs. If you look at the macroeconomic situation, you haven't created new net costs. What you've done is take costs from healthcare or environmental remediation or what have you, and moved them, shifted them into the price of coal. So now they're visible to consumers in a single number on their electricity bill, where before those costs were distributed and diffuse and largely invisible. So the nature of the costs has changed, and you certainly have a very different political situation or political dynamic, because people don't like costs they can see and they're perfectly willing to ignore costs they can't see. But economically, in terms of macroeconomics, you've not raised total prices on consumers, and you shouldn't expect a macroeconomic hit for it. In fact, you would expect greater macroeconomic efficiency, because what you're doing is creating something that's closer to a perfect market. If you'll go read your Adam Smith, you'll find that free markets involve perfect information and competition and low barriers to entry and exit. So what you're doing is giving consumers better, clearer information that they can react to more easily. You're showing them the true costs instead of hiding costs here and there. So on a market model, if you believe in the dynamic of the free market, you should expect better economic performance, because you're closer to the ideal of a market. So like I said, everybody knows how to say the word externalities, and everybody sort of gives a nod to it on the way past, but I don't feel like the notion of externalities is taken as seriously as it ought to be in sort of lay policy conversation or lay economic conversation, or even in many cases in wonky conversation. We talk about costs in a very loosey-goosey, imprecise sort of way. So anyway, that's the axe I have to grind about costs, and it's probably better just to say it into a video nobody will watch than to spend several hours writing it down. Okay, thanks, bye.